Worldwide movement, peace, love, respect. Big King Sadiq hollering at you one more again. All right. So I will try and make this video as brief as possible while tackling a rather interesting and intricate subject, right? Or maybe not intricate is the best description. The detail that it is deserving of is intricate, right? Because this is an important subject. All right. So this video is civilization evolution cycles. All right. So, I guess the best way to approach this is from a broad perspective, right? All right, so if we look at what we are experiencing on this planet currently, those who have experienced and who have been on this road of spiritual evolution, right? Spiritual maturation and evolution for some time. May be able to a little bit more easily encapsulate what I'm saying. So, life, right? Life has a point or a purpose to it, right? We're not just here to wake up, or be born, grow up, and then, get out here and make a fuss and die, right? There's a purpose to all this. That purpose is spiritual maturation, right? All of the, I like to call it a collage of experiences that you have during your lifetime are part of a maturation process for your spirit, right? That often takes many lifetimes to complete, right? This is the reasoning for the process of reincarnation. You don't get it all in one lifetime, right? Because it's a lot to get. For us to truly mature spiritually to the point where we are ready to move forward in ascension, right? And it's a process of us living our lives, experiencing, the multitude of different situations and scenarios that we are put in that give us the incredibly complex experience of a lifetime that shapes and molds us, right? In such a way that we actually mature spiritually and carry those lessons with us beyond that particular lifetime, right? And as you accumulate enough of those lifetime lessons that go with you from lifetime to lifetime, the maturation process really begins to take hold, and you become you eventually become what is referred to as an old soul, right? A soul or a spirit that has lived many lifetimes and learned many lessons in many different ways, right? And that provides the kind of maturation that is necessary for you truly to ascend. I say, and I'm broadening the scope a little bit here, I say again in the title that this is civilization evolution cycles, right? So just as our individual lives have a purpose and a course to them, right? For us to successfully attain spiritual maturation, the same can be said for entire civilizations, right? I want to go beyond saying species, but You get my point. Um, if we look at man or mankind or humans, you know, it gets so confusing these days, right? What terminology is quote unquote acceptable. Um, but if you look at our time here on this planet and look at us collectively during that time, we have been engaged in that in our own civilization evolution cycle, right? Um, and certainly we can look back throughout our history and see our technological advancements very easily, right? In fact, that is what most of us tend to gauge our advancement as a civilization on. Solely, what things have we been able to do and accomplish technically? Um, and that's certainly a measuring stick that's valid and worth using, but certainly not the only measuring stick that we can or should be using. And in fact, the more pertinent measuring stick should be one applied to our spiritual maturation, right? Um, these physical lifetimes, again, are for a purpose to aid in that spiritual maturation, right? Again, folks, we need to cognize and come to terms with and understand that we are, in fact, immortal beings. And this is, quite honestly, science backs this up. We are made up of matter and energy. And we know that through even just mainstream science that neither one of those things can be destroyed, right? And so certainly what um, we uncover as sentient beings is that we have a consciousness or an awareness, right? And certainly no way to destroy that as it is intangible, right? Um, so we don't just die and that's it. You disappear. Your consciousness doesn't go away. Your energy doesn't go away. Only alters or changes in state, right? And then for those of us who again understand a little bit about how this evolutionary process works, you understand that yes, you do live multiple lifetimes, and there's a very profound purpose again for that. So, as it pertains to us on a whole as a civilization on this planet, right? Um, we can look back very clearly again and chart where we've been um, and where we've come to in terms of our advancement as a civilization in technical terms very easily. Um, However, if we go to gauge our maturation, right, as a civilization, um, that requires a couple of things. Not only a broadened perspective, right, that draws us out of what we feel most connected to in this particular physical lifetime, but allows us to peer back through several lifetimes or through our collective quote unquote history as a civilization. And we find with that we have gone through different stages, right, of our maturation. And one of the probably most important stages um, was when we got to a point technologically that we threatened our own existence, right? Um, because, and the reason that's important is because I believe it caused us to take a look at least a little bit at the dangers of maturing or advancing technologically without advancing spiritually, right? Or without maturing spiritually. Um, you will destroy yourself and likely others and other things, right? It's sort of an eventual outcome. You need that maturation to go hand in hand, lockstep with your technological advancement, right? Okay. So we got to a point when we, discovering atomic energy and all of the different ways that nuclear energy can be harnessed and applied and unfortunately weaponized, right? We got to a point where we were incredibly close to destroying ourselves, right? I'm 47. I recall very vividly being in high school, in junior high and in high school, and going through like nuclear drills, right? Getting us used to going to bomb shelters, and I can remember being in class and sometimes us, the teacher suspending class and turning on the news so that we could look live at several different instances where we came incredibly close to nuclear war, right? Which at the scale that they had ramped up the nuclear weaponry between the United States and quote unquote Russia, and some other international powers, it was to the point that we would have literally destroyed ourselves and quite possibly this planet, right? But we didn't, right? We did not. As close as we came, we did not. And at that point, we passed a certain precipice, right? At that point, where we did not destroy ourselves, we passed a point where we changed collectively, right? In a way that I don't think was noticeable at the time, but that we are in fact reaping the rewards of now, which is also very easily not noticed for one that does not look with a spiritually mature eye. Okay, so what we passed in that precipice was that as sentient beings, we did push the pause button in our own minds and hearts and our spirits and said, well, wait a minute, where have we steered ourselves to? Where have we gotten to that we're about to destroy ourselves, right? And that did at least plant the seed for us to begin to question ourselves in ways that perhaps we did not previously do, right? And it's that questioning of ourselves that led us to the point that we could evolve, right? Or at least begin our evolutionary steps. And it is those evolutionary steps that have gotten us up here to where we are at 2012 in the Ethiopian calendar, which is likely a lot more accurate than the Gregorian calendar that we are typically using, right? So this all talks about, 2012 and that Mayan prediction, which so many people perceived as a foretelling of a destructive apocalypse, right? Which it certainly was not about that. It was likely their attempt at explaining what I'm explaining right now, right? That we go through these cycles. Previously on the planet, those cycles occurred and there were groups of us, right? Or what we refer to as civilizations on this planet that ascended beyond, right? The state that we are currently in terms of our evolutionary progress, we'll say. And Now, what we are experiencing is yet again an opportunity for that ascension. And now, uh, because of the incredible uh, transformation, I guess is the only word I'm able to come up with, that we see our planet going through uh, in this area of the galaxy at this time, and with all of the incredible energy that is being emitted from the central sun, which is what is commonly referred to, or commonly referring to the center of our galaxy. And in accordance with that, the incredible energies that each of the stars in our galaxy is expelling to the planets in their respective solar systems, ours included, right? Which is very much facilitating this incredible opportunity that we have as a civilization to evolve, or in essence, collectively ascend, right? Okay, so it's a very beautiful process in my estimation, right? Uh, this is something that I think goes beyond what the average individual might. Well, I know it has to go beyond what the average individual would forecast, or even touch on subject wise in terms of evolution or ascension. And that is the fact that we are not the only planet or species that has gone through this process, right? This is a galactic process that is actually refined, right? Very well. This is not an accidental thing. There are other species which those of us, and maybe this is where my other background and some of my auxiliary disciplines comes up, like ufology, right? Those of us in that community understand and know, with the incredible bevy of evidence and information that's available there, that there are a multitude. This galaxy is teeming with life, right? And not just basic organic life, but very complex and very intelligent life as well, right? We are not the only civilization in the entire galaxy, folks. And for those of you who thought so, um, eventually you'll likely get to a point where you stop and just think to yourself about the sheer numbers alone, how it doesn't make sense that we would be alone in this galaxy as the only civilized species, right? So, that speaks to the fact that there are a lot of older civilizations, right? And we see evidence in that in the star systems and that whole planets or planetoids that are capable of supporting life. Many of which very much very much older than ours, right? And likely having civilizations that are very much our senior, potentially by millions of years. Okay, so those species or those civilizations, right, have gone through this evolution cycle in a similar fashion, right, on their planet, in their solar systems. Um, and it's actually intertwined, right? So I talked a little bit about how, as we go through different lifetimes, we become what's referred to as an old soul with a huge bank of experience that we carry along with us that aids in our spiritual maturation. Okay. So what's very important and relative to now, as we are actually going through sort of the graduation phase of our evolutionary process, is that many of us will, in fact, complete the ascension, right? Um, Probably more than a lot of folks have in mind, right? Because we have this big, we're very much tied to separation mentality. Most of us on this planet. So naturally, we tend to want to point the finger. Or we'll ascend. You won't. You won't ascend. We will, and all that type of stuff, right? That's just not the way it works. It's not as simple as saying all black people will ascend and all white people won't, or all white people will ascend and all black people won't, or all Asian people will ascend and all Hispanic people won't. It's just not that simple. First of all, we need to get beyond those lines of that structure, that construct that was made of racism, right? That is quite buffoonish, actually. Right, and that's how it's viewed by those of higher spiritual maturity. All right, and one of the things to keep in mind about that, or to think about that, and why it's so silly, is the fact that we hold on to these lines of race, not realizing that with our reincarnation, we often live different races. Right? And that's part of the maturation in itself. Um, I even saw a very interesting movie years ago, Twilight Zone movie back in the 80s, that had one of the short stories showed a man who was racist. He would be someone who you would actually, he was a white gentleman who you would likely put as like the poster child of the white supremacist, sort of mentality, right? Had a problem with everybody else on the planet of every other species, particularly, people of color and but just about everybody. I mean, this guy has something negative to say about black people, Asian people, Hispanic people. He just has something negative to say about everybody, and tied it to race. Well, this guy was having this conversation in a bar, right? He started using the word nigger, right? Very offensively and directively, it's always offensive, but directly, and a couple brothers were sitting there at the table like, hold up, man, right? And was getting ready to step to the guy, and I like the way the director did it. They did so in an intelligent manner, instead of just going to fisticuffs, but they was close to doing that as well, right? So the bottom line on that is the guy's friends was all embarrassed and checked him about it, and instead of calming down and chilling out, this guy flipped out like, no, it's y'all who's tripping, you know what I mean? And he left out of the bar like that, and as he stepped out of the bar, he tripped and fell, right? And landed face first in a puddle of water. He's cussing and angry, and gets up, and he looks around, and wouldn't you know it, he doesn't recognize his surroundings. He's in Nazi Germany, and he's Jewish. Wow. Right? And next thing you know, he's got SS troops chasing him down, trying to, send him to a concentration camp or something, right? Something that was very ugly and a big display of a lack of spiritual maturation and the kind of bigotry that he was displaying. Then next thing you know, he fell again, and he pops his head up, and there's a group of Ku Klux Klansmen chasing him, talking about, we're going to get that nigga, we're going to hang you, we're going to string you up, nigga. And he's running, talking about, oh, I'm a white man, but he looks down at his hands, and he's black. Wow. So you're getting the picture, I'm sure. is that we've got to get out of that, right? It's a mental construct, a societal construct that we can and are defeating right now. But I said all that to say that when we talk about the evolutionary cycle of a civilization, you are talking about things that transcend beyond lifetimes, right? And we carry along lessons as profound as those lessons that that gentleman was learning there, right? And it is that carrying along of those lessons that again aids us in completion of our spiritual maturation. Now, as a civilization, on this planet now, we're going through a very, very interesting and incredible and awe-inspiring situation. So, for those of you who also may not have been cognizant of this, there are nefarious or dark forces that have wanted to impede or stop or slow down this civilization evolution cycle for us here on this planet, right? And you know, it's a whole nother video, and if you check through my videos, you'll see where I touch on that in other videos, right? But it's a very broad subject in terms of who those nefarious dark forces are and what and how they place impediments in our lives to prevent us from this ascension, right? But nonetheless, we are ascending still, right? And because of the incredible positioning of our solar system right now in this galaxy, and of the energies that are being emitted again from the central sun of the galaxy, or the central core of the galaxy, and our sun and all the stars that are emitting incredible energies out to the planets in their solar systems. Because of all that, the vibrational frequency of this planet on a whole has been increasing incredibly for quite some time now. I talk on a number of my other videos about the Schumann resonance and how you can do your own independent free-thinking research into the Schumann resonance and how it has been increasing, right, in sort of a step-like way, right, for quite some time now. Right, so the vibrational frequency resonance of this planet has been continuously increasing and will do so on and through an actual dimensional shift, because what separates our dimensions are vibrational frequency thresholds, right? Okay, so as we eclipse those thresholds, we thus move into higher dimensionality. Okay, so wherever you are on that, understand that in that process, that maturation process, there are some of us who will likely not be able to ascend during this particular physical lifetime. But that's all right. Remember, keep the broad picture in mind, right? Spiritual maturation is what this is all about. These physical lifetimes are very useful and very beautiful in a multitude of ways, but certainly not the end all, right? At all. It's just not. It's just not, right? And the broader scope is this whole maturation process that we have to be keeping in mind. So it's all right. We're not all going to mature spiritually to the same point at the same time. It's just not going to happen. Our experiences are too diverse and individual and specific to us for us to all reach that point at the same time. However, a great deal of us will. And that is part of the reason for us all experiencing or having a collective experience right now, right? Which is sort of evening the playing field a little bit. And though not comfortable, it's certainly providing the crucible that is needed for many of us to have to go through enough tough situations. And again, folks, if you look back through my videos, I talk about how it's often the most difficult situations that we go through that provide us with the most beneficial and the most impactful and profound lessons spiritually, right? That's important. And very relevant to what we're going through on this planet today collectively, right? So again, that is all fostering our collective ascension. But again, some of us still will not complete the ascension in this particular physical lifetime, but that's all right. And it's actually more than all right. It serves a purpose that we don't all 100% ascend at the same time. Those individuals who do not ascend, right, in this physical lifetime will likely continue their spiritual maturation on physically in a different civilization, perhaps even on a different planet, right? Likely with the next civilization that will be going through this process and is just a lot further back in their maturation process than we are, or maybe not a lot further back, right? Maybe they're only a lifetime or two off before they collectively ascend and mature to that point as a civilization. So their civilization evolution cycle is certainly going to be a little bit different than ours, right? But those of us who again may not ascend with the collective